What if Africa was never colonized? It's one of those questions that seems simple at first. A continent untouched by European empires. No Berlin Conference. No arbitrary borders. No foreign powers carving up land they barely understood. Just Africa. Continuing its own story. But would that world be better? Or simply different? Because before we answer that question, we need to understand something most history books oversimplify. Africa was never a blank space waiting to be shaped. It was already full of civilizations. Empires rose and fell long before European contact. Mali, Songhai, Great Zimbabwe, Benin, Ethiopia, Swahili city-states. These were not primitive societies stumbling through history. They had governments, trade networks, legal systems, architecture, universities. Diplomatic relationships stretching across continents. Timbuktu attracted scholars from distant lands. Swahili merchants connected East Africa to Arabia, Persia, India, and beyond. The Mali Empire controlled vast gold reserves and became one of the wealthiest states of its time. The Kingdom of Benin produced artwork so sophisticated that European visitors struggled to believe it had been created locally. Ethiopia maintained one of the oldest continuous states in human history. Africa wasn't waiting for civilization. Civilization was already there, but like every civilization in history, it wasn't perfect. Kingdoms fought wars, empires expanded, others collapsed. Power shifted constantly, alliances formed, then broke apart. Succession crises erupted. Rulers pursued wealth. Neighbors competed for influence. Human history everywhere is like this. Not because any people are uniquely flawed, but because people are people. Then came one of the darkest chapters in human history, the transatlantic slave trade. For more than 3 centuries, millions of Africans were captured and forced across the Atlantic. Historians estimate that around 12 million people survived the journey known as the Middle Passage. Many more died before they ever reached the coast. Disease, violence, forced marches, starvation. Entire communities were torn apart. Families disappeared, cultures were uprooted, and here's where history becomes uncomfortable. European demand drove the system. The plantation economies of the Americas required labor on an unimaginable scale. But Europeans did not capture every enslaved person themselves. Some African rulers and merchants participated in the trade. Prisoners of war were sold. Rivals were exchanged. Human beings became commodities inside a global economic system. This doesn't fit neatly into stories of heroes and villains, because history rarely does. People resisted. People collaborated. People survived. People made choices inside systems larger than themselves. And then, history changed forever. In 1884, representatives of Europe's major powers gathered in Berlin. Britain, France, Germany, Belgium, Portugal, Italy. Almost none of them were African. Yet they would help shape the future of millions of Africans. Maps were unfolded, lines were drawn, territories were claimed. Entire ethnic groups were split apart. Historic rivals were placed inside the same borders. Communities that had governed themselves for centuries suddenly found themselves ruled by distant empires. This became known as the Scramble for Africa, and its effects can still be felt today. But now, let's remove that moment entirely. No Berlin Conference, no colonial borders imposed from outside, no foreign administrators deciding the fate of people they had never met. So what happens instead? Africa does what every other region of the world has done throughout history. It evolves. Internally, kingdoms expand, others fragment. New states emerge. Alliances form through trade, diplomacy, and war. Some societies centralize power, others decentralize. The map becomes almost unrecognizable. Nigeria may never exist in its current form. The Democratic Republic of Congo could split into multiple regional powers, or unify under entirely different circumstances. The countries we know today might never appear, and entirely new nations could take their place. Imagine growing up in that world. The maps hanging in classrooms would look unfamiliar. The names memorized by school children would be different. The heroes celebrated in textbooks might be people our timeline never remembers. The languages dominating diplomacy could shift. The capitals influencing global affairs might sit in places we rarely think about today. Perhaps Lagos evolves into one of the world's great financial centers. Perhaps Mombasa becomes a gateway connecting Africa to Asia and the Middle East. Perhaps Zanzibar develops into a major hub of commerce and innovation. Perhaps Timbuktu reemerges as one of humanity's leading centers of scholarship. Or perhaps entirely new cities rise through opportunity, migration, and invention, because history doesn't reward geography alone. It rewards institutions, adaptation, stability, trust, the choices societies make over generations. And those choices could have created futures we struggle to imagine today. Then there's the question of resources. Africa possesses extraordinary wealth beneath its soil. Gold, diamonds, copper, oil, cobalt, uranium, rare earth minerals. Resources that helped power industrial growth across the world. In our timeline, much of that extraction benefited colonial economies. Railways often connected mines to ports. Infrastructure frequently prioritized exports over local development. Labor systems were organized around production. But what if more of that wealth remained inside African institutions? Could industrialization have accelerated? Could African-owned industries emerge earlier? Could universities in Addis Ababa, Cairo, Timbuktu, or entirely new cities become global centers of research and innovation? Possibly. But there are no guarantees. Because resources alone do not create prosperity. They can also create corruption, competition, political instability, violence. Economists call this the resource curse. Natural wealth can become either a blessing or a burden, depending on the institutions built around it. Even without colonization, Africa would still face enormous challenges: droughts, disease outbreaks, political struggles, civil conflicts, power transitions. These are not uniquely African problems. They are human problems, found throughout history. Europe experienced devastating wars. Asia endured imperial conflicts. The Americas witnessed conquest and revolution. No continent escaped suffering, and yet, without colonial rule, some tragedies may never have happened. The Congo Free State, ruled by Belgium's King Leopold II, became infamous for forced labor and brutality. Historians estimate that millions died under the system, although exact numbers remain debated. The Herero and Nama genocide in present-day Namibia claimed tens of thousands of lives. The Maji Maji Rebellion in German East Africa led to famine and mass death. These events were not inevitable. They emerged from choices. Which raises a difficult question. How many lives might have unfolded differently if those choices had never been made? And if Africa changes, the world changes too? Because continents do not exist in isolation. Europe's industrial expansion may have looked different. Global trade routes could shift. Different cities might dominate international commerce. Different universities could attract the brightest minds. Different powers might shape geopolitics. Even the technologies defining modern life may have emerged under entirely different circumstances. Imagine opening a history textbook and seeing Lagos listed beside London and New York as one of the cities that shaped the modern world. If you enjoy exploring the hidden forces that shaped our world, subscribe to Vanta.